Please rise. Almighty God, pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancements and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen.
Amen.
Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past and present, and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. I welcome all members of the public here tonight to this council meeting who have come along to observe the proceedings. I would like to advise that those present at tonight's meeting is also being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and or image is broadcast. Also acknowledge any previous councillors that are in the gallery? No. And Manningham City Council also acknowledges the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse cultures and backgrounds. All council meetings are controlled by a meeting procedural local law. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda by calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. All councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I draw your attention to two opportunities for you to ask questions tonight. Verbal questions allow people who registered prior to the meeting to ask questions, but only about issues which are not on the agenda. Written questions are dealt with towards the end of the meeting, and these can be about any issue, including items on tonight's agenda. Item number 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence.
There are no apologies or requests for leave of absence, Madam Mayor.
Item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest.
There are no notifications of conflict of interest, Madam Mayor.
Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Yes. I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 26 September 2017 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Piccinini. Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item number 5, verbal questions from the public.
There are no questions, Madam Mayor.
Item number 6, 6.1. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with my pleasure to advise that Councillor Jeff Goff recently received 2 awards from the Municipal Association of Victoria, recognising his outstanding service to the local government and in particular Manningham City Council. At the MAV annual dinner on the 19th of October, Councillor Goff was awarded a 20-year Certificate of Outstanding Service Award and a Certificate of Mayor Emeritus, which is awarded to mayors who have served 3 or more terms. Councillor Goff has, of course, served 4 terms, 2002 to 2003, 2007 to 8, 2010, 11 and 2011, 12. For those who would like to know what the Mayor Emeritus retains the title of Honorary Mayor. Councillor Goff, on behalf of the Manningham community, congratulations and thank you for your continuous and untiring work as a councillor for over 20 years. It's my pleasure to once again award these certificates to you in recognition of your service.
I have seen it, but not like this. These are really good. Do you need it at an angle that doesn't reflect?
Yes.
In charge as always. There's two. There we go.
Ah,
We'll do them
There we
both.
go.
We'll
There
do
we go.
them both. Excellent.
There you go.
Thank you very
Congratulations.
much.
They're
Thank you.
beautiful.
Very good. Thanks, William. They look fantastic.
Speech.
You don't really want to speak. However, I will say one thing. Look, it's been a privilege to have served here for this amount of time. Manningham's a wonderful city, and the community is great, and it has changed a lot since I first became a councillor. In fact, it's changed a lot since I was young, because when I was a little kid, this was all orchard, and I can see all the changes that have occurred here. It is a great place. Just on the honorary, that's very good. Honorary equals doesn't get paid. But thank you very much, and thanks everybody. That's great.
We had to give you some surprise, Councillor Goff.
Very
Here
good.
we go.
Magnificent.
There you go.
Oh.
And councillors, I would also like to take the opportunity to advise councillors and the community of Remembrance Day, local events that are scheduled for November the 11th. Templestowe RSL and Doncaster RSL will be both hosting events. Councillors and the community are invited to attend these events. Doncaster RSL service will be held at the corner of Leeds Street and Doncaster Road, East Doncaster, at 10:15 a.m. And the Templestowe RSL service will be held at the Memorial Park, corner of Foot and High Street, Templestowe, at 11 a.m. I would also advise that during the week leading up to the 11th of November, there will be volunteers out selling poppies. Everybody is encouraged to purchase a poppy and to wear them proudly in memory of those who have fallen in the line of duty protecting our country. Item 7.1. Online petition, sewage treatment and water recycling plant in Ruffy Lake Park, Kunung Ward. Do I have a mover? Councillor Zephyropoulos.
Madam Mayor, I move that the online petition with 1,522 signatories from residents of Manningham and people from various locations across Australia and around the world, calling on Council to block the Yarra Valley Water's proposal to build a sewage treatment plant at Ruffy Lake Park, be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Zephyropoulos.
The only thing I'd like to add, Madam Mayor, is whilst this refers to a particular location, I should remind councillors that Council has already got a resolution in 2012 excluding any location in the Kunung Ward, and that is not well known out there, and I think it's important for us to publicise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chen.
Nothing further to add.
Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 7.2, petition. Sewage treatment and recycling plant in Ruffy Lake Park, Kunung Ward. I have a mover. Councillor Haynes.
Madam Mayor, I move that the petition with 2,216 signatories objecting to the erection of a sewage treatment plant at Ruffy Lake Park be received and referred through to the appropriate authority for consideration.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Haynes.
Just, Madam Mayor, that the lead petition on this has done a lot of work physically getting these from people that do attend and go to the lake and that area, and I support the previous resolution from 2012 as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chen.
Nothing further to add.
Any speakers against?
Question, Madam Mayor.
Councillor.
Madam Mayor, when we say we're going to refer this to the office, are we going to refer this to outside our municipality to the water people, or are we referring it to our own officers?
The resolution is to refer it to our officers, but of course we will put it through to Yarra Valley Water.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 8, admission of urgent business. Do I have a mover? Councillor Galbally.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that Council admits for consideration the following item of urgent business: the appointment of Authorised Officer, Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Galbally.
No, nothing to add.
Councillor Conlon.
Nothing.
Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9, 9.1, planning application 16/026580 at 810 Elgar Road, Doncaster, for the use and development of the land for an 11-storey residential hotel with associated basement parking, waiver of the associated requirements for bicycle facilities, and the creation of alteration to access to a road in a road zone category 1. Do I have a mover? Councillor Haynes.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand to ask the councillors to support the notice of decision to refuse a permit to this site for the hotel use. And it's clearly, if anyone knows that site, it's quite a skinny, narrow site, and it doesn't really suit the use of a hotel. And it's going to be interesting to see what does get built there, because it is between two other quite large buildings and it is within a zone that can go quite high. But I ask that we support refusing this application due to the fact that it doesn't not only fit the site but also to have a hotel and things there. It's just not. And I thank the officers for putting a refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Madam Mayor, I share the concerns expressed by the officers in relation to this development. We've already got a lot of complaints for people who are objecting to the overdevelopment that is taking place. Of course, some of that development is within the planning scheme of Manningham, and there is little we can do about it. However, whenever we find that something departs from the planning scheme, we should have the courage to say no. I congratulate the officers for taking that position.
Any speakers against?
Question, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Goff.
Just listening to the two speakers, I just need a bit of clarification in that it's not my understanding that it's because it's a hotel that this recommendation is against it. My question is a hotel permitted in this particular area? And is it against the planning scheme to build a hotel in that area? Because they're the messages that I've been getting from the debate. Is that correct? Or am I assuming that it's not correct?
Councillor Teresa.
The activity centre zone is certainly a residential hotel is a permitted use.
It is permitted.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to clear that up because the reasons with this being knocked back is to do with some car parking, the setback of the front. There are a whole lot of other minor things, but the actual fact that it's a hotel or whatever and can be built there, it is in the correct area to be built. It's some minor things and...
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Clarified. Any speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. There's no speakers against. I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. 9.2. Planning application 17/027189 at 906 to 912 Doncaster Road, Doncaster East, for the development of land for the construction of a 5-part, Part 6-storey mixed-use building over basement car parking containing retail, restaurant and offices at the lower levels and 18 dwellings above, with the associated reduction in the associated car parking requirements and waiver of the loading bay requirements of the Manningham planning scheme. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor Haynes. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to rise to support this particular proposal on Doncaster Road. It's an excellent proposition as we see it now. When I first saw this particular proposal, when it came before one of our consultative committees, the Sustainable Design Task Force, I was less thrilled with the proposal. At that time it was it had a shortfall of 30 car parking spaces or more. It had a range of other concerns. The light wells were quite tiny. That impacted the internal amenity of many of the apartments. There were more apartments. The internal circulation spaces didn't work well, but fortunately the operation of the council includes the Sustainable Design Task Force, and we were able to provide some feedback both through the professional architects who volunteer on that committee and from councillors who are on that committee, and the developer was able to give consideration to those concerns and able to address them in reviewing their plans. There are now 65 car parking spaces in this development. There's an extra level in the basement to accommodate that car parking. They're only asking for a waiver of 7 spaces. And of course, what we have here is we have a couple of shop fronts on Doncaster Road and the Jackson Court Shopping Centre that is being redeveloped. So giving a waiver to a retail development in this particular precinct that doesn't overshadow any neighbouring residential properties, because there aren't any neighbouring residential properties. It is just abutted by shops and a laneway at the rear. So I think having a Part 5, Part 6 storey development here, adding 6 offices to this shopping centre precinct will be a great development. Adding 18 dwellings, bringing residential, shop-top residential accommodation to the shopping centre will be a great benefit. And we are making sure that there are 65 car parking spaces to deal with the residents, to deal with the shop, to deal with the offices and the restaurant that are proposed here. I don't think it's going to be a great addition to the shopping centre when it's eventually built. And hopefully that this proposal will be built relatively quickly. And I think we'll see more of this sort of development in our shopping centre precincts. And I recommend the proposal to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support my fellow councillors' speech on this, and also the sustainable design, and the fact that this is a commercial zone, and yet the proposed development doesn't have a height that I believe will stand out as far as some on the hill. So I think this is somewhat, he's considered the neighbouring shops and the neighbouring area, and I'm looking forward to having this approved, hopefully, and also the local shops that are using it to be able to have some more commercial space within the buildings.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Councillor Chen.
Madam Mayor, I have to say that I'm able to support this application in its current form. For 2 reasons. The first issue is about the size and scale of the proposed development. Whether the proposed 6-storey building of retail space and 18 dwellings with height of 18.55 metres fit into the surrounding characteristics is a concern. Most of the buildings in Jackson Court Shopping Centre are single or 2-storey built form. The proposed development does not conform to the surroundings, and it does not conform to the nearby developments along Doncaster Road. The only exception is the Mitchell Street development, which is not within Jackson Court Shopping Centre. That site is located behind 888 Doncaster Road. It was rezoned to a mixed-use zone in 2014 under Planning Scheme Amendment. Mitchell Street is affected by DD 08 with maximum height, a mandatory height of 11 metres. But a site-specific provision was provided. Therefore, the development is now 18.20 metres high. Is it appropriate to justify the height by using Mitchell Street development as an example? I doubt it. very much. If we drive along Doncaster Road, many apartments are under construction, and they are not cheap. Is there any oversupply of apartments in Manningham and in Doncaster especially? Are we achieving the affordable housing objectives prescribed in our planning scheme? Development of Jackson Court is welcoming, but overdevelopment is not. Our resident satisfaction surveys repeatedly say about overdevelopment concern. Are we listening? My second concern is about the impact to car parking within and surrounding Jackson Court Shopping Centre. The application seeks to reduce 7 car spaces. I'm not convinced that the reduction is justifiable. The report takes into account the existing restaurant with deficiency of 18 spaces. Therefore, the proposed reduction of 7 represents a better outcome. But let's face it, its surroundings will be completely different once the proposed development is completed. The report says Doncaster Road is one of the Manningham's most well-serviced bus corridors to justify the application. Doncaster Road only have 3 bus routes. It is doubtful they are sufficient to cater for the extra demands. Council's traffic engineers do not support the proposed reduction. Should their professional assessment be given more weight? The applicant's traffic impact report says that the peak periods can be accommodated with the surrounding road network. However, Vic Road has raised concerns regarding the expected traffic generated by the proposed development. Unfortunately, Vic Road's concern was not considered to be a necessary consideration of the application. I've been in 3 occasions in the past 2 weeks, given up visiting Jackson Court Shopping Centre. Can I have more time?
Extension of time. Councillor Seconder. Councillor Zafiropoulos. Those in favour? Carried.
Thank you. I've been in 3 occasions in the past 2 weeks, giving up visiting the Jackson Court Shopping Centre, post office and veggie shop simply because of the parking and traffic issues. Since there is no master plans or structure plans in place for Jackson Court Shopping Centre, and this is the first development in Jackson Court Shopping Centre, we should look into it more stringently, especially the scale, such as height, traffic, and parking issues. Therefore, for those 2 reasons I have explained earlier, I ask my fellow councillors not to support this application in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers for? Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will rise to speak in favour of this particular application. Madam Mayor, we have at Manningham set out in our planning scheme very clearly where we want development. Actually, before I actually continue, may I ask a question? Or I know you probably say no, but can I just get a nod? Teresa, is there a height limit? Do we have a mandatory height limit in a commercial zone?
There is no height limits in commercial zones.
Thank you very much. So, in that particular case, there's no height limit, and so therefore, conceivably, you could have a 40 or 50-storey building on this particular site. The areas around our commercial zones are the areas that we're targeting for higher density living and for commercial operations. Surrounding those areas, we're not going for what the surrounding area is, and I have a great sympathy for people that live in Manningham and the area is changing. But anything that says DD08 equals a change. It's an area where we have identified as a council, we want change. So when you've got a commercial area, you're going to have change and more compact development. The surrounding area of the DDO is where change is going to occur. So we're expecting that higher density. And this basically fits into that scenario.
I know that it is a change, but this is not the first one. There's one actually going up at the moment in Jackson Court. I think I've got my right courts, haven't I? Yes, I have. Yes. So there's one already going up. And in fact, that was limited to a height of 14 or 15 metres. That was asking for an actual zoning change because it was in a residential zone. That had a zoning change as well as we did put some heights on that. So indeed, those sorts of heights are what is, I suppose, getting that mass into that particular area to stop the spread of those areas going further down into the residential areas. So we went for a long period of time, and I'm happy to review it again if the council wants to review it, but we actually sought to make sure that the higher density is in our shopping centres and along the major roads of Doncaster Road, Blackburn Road, Williamson's Road, Manningham Road. That's where we've asked for it to be, and you get our map out and you see the map. Unfortunately, a lot of them are in the Doncaster Road area there. So, Madam Mayor, I believe that this does fit within our policies, and it is in the shopping centre. So I believe that because it does fit with our policies, that we actually should approve this. If we want to change our policies, that's another thing.
Any speakers against? Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Madam Mayor, I can understand Councillor Goff's comments, but I have greater sympathy for the comments that Councillor Chen made, simply because whilst we're allowing people to take full advantage of the concessions and the rules we have in our planning scheme, we should also be very stringent about applying the rules to the full extent, and we're not doing it here. And let me just pick up one issue that has already been mentioned. The scheme requires 92 car parking spaces. What the development provides is 65, a substantial difference. How do we make it up to be only 7? By using the fact that we have Junction Court public car park, and therefore that gives them a credit of 20 spaces, which still doesn't add up to 92. There are still 7 spaces there. But I have some issues even with the credit of 20 parking spaces at Jackson Court, because every time I go to Jackson Court, shop owners complain to me about the fact that the space that they've got there for parking is not adequate, particularly during peak hours. So how can this council allow, even if it is 7 car parking spaces, and also a deficiency of 18 spaces for the restaurant, in my view, is totally unacceptable. We all know that restaurants can become very popular, and they can have lots and lots of people. And this, and the excuse that it's mixed use and people will come in at different times is not convincing me. So I'm against this proposal, the way it is.
Thank you. Any speakers for? Councillor McLeish, sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, here we have a proposal which has a handful of shops to the left and a handful of shops to the right and a handful of shops to the rear, and it's on the busiest road in Manningham. If ever there is a place where we're going to have intensive development, where we want to see offices built, where we want to see shop-top living development, this is a location. Now, I appreciate the height may be of a concern to councillors, and when the previous development in Mitchell Street was proposed, I opposed it, because that particular proposal abutted residential properties, and I thought the height was too significant. But that proposal is now done, it's dusted, it's history, it's in the planning scheme. I lost that debate, and I accept the outcome, because that's what we do. The reality here is we have a perfectly reasonable commercial development that is proposing shop-top living, and if you can't do it in a location that has buses from 5-something in the morning till midnight at night, that in peak hour has buses every 5 minutes running past the front door into the CBD, that has had the best service bus route in the city bar none, the 907 bus, then I don't know where we can do it. This is exactly the sort of development that we have asked for. We have said that we want to concentrate the intensification of development in the land that people find the most challenging from a residential perspective. Because we wanted to preserve, through DD08, we preserved the residential character of the back streets of Manningham. The application of DD08, which resulted in the apartment buildings along our main roads, also resulted in the protection of residential blocks from apartment buildings and overdevelopment in the back streets of Manningham. That's what DD08 was all about, and that's what this particular development is about. We need to have these sorts of developments in these locations because we must, as required by the state government, provide for population growth in our city, and that's why I'm recommending this proposal to Council.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 9.3. Planning application 16/026751 at 100 to 102 Williams Road, Doncaster, for the construction of a 3-storey apartment building comprising of 21 dwellings, an associated basement, car parking and altered access to a road in a road zone category 1. Do I have a mover? Councillor Haynes.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fellow councillors, this is for an approval. This officer's report is to ask for an approval of this application. There is 11 pages of extra conditions that have been put through, and the development summary is quite clear. It's 2 sites, 1300 on Williamsons Road. For those that don't know where this site is, it's near the St Gregory's School, and that has been some of the concerns with submitters to do with the school kids crossing that road and the access for the kids. And part of the conditions also is to add a widening of an extra metre to that side road to assist with making certain that there are no traffic and pedestrian issues. And a lot of those things have been met within this. There is also a covenant over these properties, which has been dealt with within the conditions as well. And I'm very thankful that the officers have sought legal advice on this and informed us at length with the conditions that they've put in regarding the legal authority on 4.3.7 pertaining to those restricted covenants regarding the brickwork and the structure. This is something that has been obviously had to be dealt with before with planning, and these 11 pages of extra conditions help for us to get that information. So the overlooking and the overshadowing are also within the conditions. There are many conditions upon this developer that needs to be dealt with, and it's also been stepped back with a building height of 10.3 metres, and there is stepping back to deal with the overshadowing and the overlooking, and there has been a lot of work with the developer and being part of the submitters meetings. Everything that could be dealt with as far as me gathering information goes has been dealt with, and I ask that we, fellow councillors, also support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Conlon.
Nothing further.
Any speakers against? I'll put that. Councillor Chen.
Yes,
Speaking against? Yes.
I have a problem, Madam Mayor. I have a problem with the restrictive covenant, and because this site is subject to the brick and brick veneer construction covenant, And the proposed development applies to so-called the Robertson facade system. And this system involves laying the brick into a precast concrete, and that makes it look like, it feel like a brick and brick veneer. And because we accept the applicant's legal opinion, and I'm just concerned that because each covenant that looks similar and will have their slightly different words, and that will be interpreted completely differently. And the council should not be in a position to hold a view and as to which way the covenant should be interpreted. And even though the applicant provides his own legal opinion. And if the court decides otherwise, the council will be in breach of restrictive covenant, and by granting a planning permit. And because I also wish to emphasize that the proper construction of an instrument sometimes is a question of law, and the meaning of a particular words or terms may be a question of fact. And whether the same principle applies to this covenant, I don't know. I think that it has to leave to the court to decide. And because my concern is because this non-compliance of restrictive covenant is one of the objectors' reason to object. So for this reason, I just can't support this. Yeah, I think that it should go, interpretation should go to the court before we can grant a planning permit.
Thank you. Any speakers for? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, once again, on the same basis, I'm rising to support this particular proposition. This is on Williamson's Road, a very busy intersection, no less, in our city. It's under DD 08. This is where council has determined this sort of development should be, and I have no concerns that we have this particular matter considered in an effective way. I draw people's attention to section 8.44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49 in the report, where Supreme Court cases are quoted in the opinions in respect of whether this particular brick facade is acceptable. This matter has been well argued in court. It is very clear what the decisions are in respect of these sorts of planning matters. They have been appealed, and the firm decisions have been made that these particular forms are an acceptable interpretation of brick veneer and an acceptable presentation of these particular developments. It's not up to council to try and push these things, to try and fly in the face of these sorts of legal decisions, because in doing so we would be wasting our community's money fighting unnecessary battles in decisions that we cannot win. This is not the sort of issue we should be attempting to take on. I think this particular proposal is directly in keeping with our DD 08 planning scheme. This is the type of busy intersection where we've called for apartment buildings to be built. They have good access to public transport. They have reasonably good access to local shopping centres. And I think this is just where we should be having more intense development. And I support the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Goff.
I thank Councillor Chen for her speech, because it's actually triggered something in my mind. Is council at all liable or responsible for granting a permit in an area that does have a covenant of brick veneer on it? And do we ask them to get that waived before, as part of a condition? Is that a way in which you could go through it? Because if it is, if it says it's got to be a brick, it's obviously a brick finish, then I know that we're splitting hairs here, but are we, by passing this and assuming those other cases, are we, by actually passing it, in breach of anything?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in terms of receiving planning applications, the application said that it was complying with the covenant, so that was the further information and assessment we asked them to do. And then, like everything else, that was cross-checked against the evidence. So it's very similar to anything else. So they weren't asking for any waiver of a covenant or any interpretation. They they provided evidence to say that they were compliant with the spirit of the covenant.
Thank you.
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McLeish?
Could the officers please confirm whether we have established through our own legal channels the veracity of this particular matter?
As the report outlines, there is case study, and we believe we have, but there is still another avenue, and the last avenue for that to be looked at would be at VCAT, because with any legal interpretation, whether it's on parking or design or objectives, so even though we believe we have it, it can still be tested. It isn't a black and white thing, so.
Okay. Any speakers against? Would you like to summarise, councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few more things to add that I didn't mention earlier is the landscape design is also for new canopy trees and a lot of extra things within these conditions that aren't necessarily part of our planning scheme, but are to do with assisting with the traffic report and the pedestrian access. And I'd like to mention 1.22.3 is for a dark pattern paving upon the pedestrian path area and vehicular accessway where visible to Williamson's Road. It's also going to help with the pedestrian and family access around that area. And that's one of the extra conditions that I think we are very happy to get and have been very good to be able to work with the officers to get, and also the widening of the service road to match existing pavement and localised widening of the eastern corner as well, and that the actual developer will need to fund that and also meet those conditions. So, and I'm hoping that we do approve this application and that it doesn't end up in another court or VCAT, so these conditions may even be altered if it did. So I'm just asking for the fellow councillors to support the 11 extra pages of conditions and this application.
Thank you, councillor. I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 10, 10.1. Draft Domini Reserve Management Plan finalisation for endorsement. Do I have a mover? Councillor Galbally.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to move it, but with an alternate motion. And my alternate motion is that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of request that officers investigate and prepare a report to Council in early 2008 on future options for the Domini Recreation Centre.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Conlon.
Is that 2008 or 2018?
18.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've passed 2008.
Sorry, I thought I heard that 2008 as well.
That's what
It's
she said,
18.
yeah. No, I thought
Thank you for
so.
clarifying. Thought that was just me. Councillor Galbally.
It was a teeny mistake.
What? Teen mistake?
Councillor Galbally.
Okay. Yes, Madam Mayor. Park Orchards community have been waiting for many years to resolve a few issues, re the facilities at Domini. As we know, we've got quite a few tenants and most importantly, the urgent update of the change rooms to accommodate our youth and the number of children that play sport. And I've got to commend the clubs for all of that, and they're actually working exactly how we want our community to work to provide a healthy and active city. I'm sure it does a lot in helping the health of our children. Along with that, of course, it's used as a learning centre, and it's also used as a dance academy, and all these multi-uses of the facility has actually caused some managerial issues, which is one reason why I've asked for the final report, because when we go back to our survey or the submissions that we've received, 90% of those, as we see, did come from associations with the junior and senior football clubs. And out of all of our tenants, we don't seem to have a consensus that they're all that happy with the final draft. But I still ask that we accept this concept plan, although it hasn't been positively received by all our tenants group. And I'm content that in this executive summary, which actually includes the fact that there will be consultation with the tenants during the design development stage. So there will be an option to try and manage this further. So I ask you to support this recommendation with my alternate motion so that council can get the ball rolling, so to speak, and finally start with the changes that we need to see at Domini Reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Galbally. I agree with the alternate motion, particularly in fact, the whole motion, because I've taken a lot of time to try and balance up the needs of the clubs and the other tenants here. I understand that we may not have the best outcome, but in balancing it all up, we have to understand that there's a limited amount of money for this project, and there's a time that this has been going on far too long in my mind. And so I would ask the councillors to support the alternate motion so that we can get this thing moving, and we'll hopefully, through the consultation process, the best outcome within the restrictions that we've got will be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Okay.
I'd like to move an amendment if I could, please, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McLeish.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'd like to amend the recommendation clause D after the words detailed design to add the phrase, comma, in consultation with the tenants, comma.
Okay. Councillor Galbally, do you accept that?
Well, it's actually already in the executive summary, so I don't think it really adds anything to it, so I prefer not to.
So you want to debate them?
Do you want to debate the...
Well, the relevance of it, because it's already been stated that
It's not within
Well,
the
do I-
motion, though.
during the design
Okay.
development stage.
Do I have a seconder to Councillor McLeish? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Make sure that what Councillor McLeish is adding is to that.
Yeah. All right. Councillor Haynes is seconding that. Councillor McLeish, can you be clear exactly what you're moving and all that you're moving?
Certainly, Madam Mayor, I have provided the officers with a text of it. I have a text of it here.
And is that...
Could you read it again?
Yes, well... and is that...
To provide it in writing, and I've provided it in writing. You're welcome to look at the recommendation, councillors. It's in your papers. Clause D is very simple to read. And as I have said, the amendment says to amend the recommendation clause D after the words detailed design to add the phrase in consultation with the tenants. It's a very simple four-word phrase.
Can I just clarify with you, are you including that with what has been presented?
Yes, Madam Mayor, yes. Yes, I'm not
So-
attempting to amend what Councillor Galbally has proposed. I'm simply adding a further amendment to the motion.
So, the full motion
Yes,
with the Councillor Galbally's
yes, Madam Mayor.
and then yours on top of that?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Just clarifying,
Yep.
Councillor, that it includes everything.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Can I speak to my amendment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I agree with the sentiments that have been expressed. This has been a challenging proposition. We have a very busy venue, and it's a complicated challenge to resolve those competing uses and to try and establish an equitable and to maintain an equitable basis for using the facility. And part of that equitable basis is to make sure that as we move into the detailed design of the proposed enhancements for the facility, is to ensure that the tenants are appropriately consulted on that detailed design. That's the intent of this minor addition, and I agree it's recorded in the report, but I also think it's important to ensure that the motion that is before council is clear to the community and to all of the organisations that use this facility, that they will be consulted in respect of this detailed design. It's an important consideration for them because they are the people who end up continuing to use this particular facility. The change room facilities are a classic example of some of the limitations that exist at this facility right now. They are tiny. They're completely inadequate. We've got a football club that has just won 3 third division finals and is now moving up to second division. They're a very successful club. They're not the only users of the venue. There are cricket club, there is a dance academy, there is the learning centre, and there are other users. Trying to make sure that we've got adequate change facilities, adequate function rooms for the tenants that are well designed to their purpose within the constraints of the budget is quite critical. And I think it's key that we ensure that the motion that we put to our community actually reflects that we intend to continue to consult with them on those detailed designs. Hence why I'm adding this to the particular motion. I don't believe it changes the intent of the report, and I think it's a reasonable and acceptable way forward, Madam Mayor, and I ask my fellow councillors to support it.
Okay, Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just, I do support the alternative recommendation and the way it's been put forward for us, which is a bit of an alteration to what the officer's recommendation is. So I thank Councillor Galbally for that. And also to add this to the D, which is in consultation with the tenants, are the only words that I see added, and I can't see that this alters anything. And I agree that we probably should put in consultation with the tenants on many of our on many of our motions. So I support this.
Okay, any speakers against? Okay, so let's put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. It's carried. Just got to move the amendment now. It's done.
Now you've got to move it as
Now you've got to
Now we're going to move it as
It becomes a
a, say,
substantive motion now.
which becomes, yes, do it again. So, Councillor McLeish, so now.
Councillor McLeish is a move of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I don't have anything further to add. I wholeheartedly support the observations made by Councillor Galbally and the other councillor have spoken, and I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes?
It's just a repeat.
It's just,
I agree, Madam Mayor.
okay. Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Whew. Okay, I'd like to remind the people in the gallery that we will be clearing the question box shortly. Please submit any questions you have in the next few minutes.
What's the amendment?
I would also stress that we will deal with a maximum of 2 councillors. Councillors, excuse me, councillors. I would also stress that I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these through additional questions in writing to council through the normal channels. Do remember we are being recorded. So,
Normally.
Item 11, Assets and Engineering. 11.1, Manningham Bus Network Review 2017, Council endorsement. Mover, Councillor Chen.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Manningham Bus Network Review 2017 is a document prepared to advocate the state government and other authorities on bus-related issues in Manningham. The review provides 20 recommendations. They include service and infrastructure improvements. Most importantly, the review reaffirms the importance of advocating for bus rapid transit solution between Manningham and CBD. Of the 20 recommendations, one recommendation is the Council's responsibility. That is to deliver 31 bus shelters at preferred locations. I need to point out that the review identified demanding is growing for more frequent services to Box Hill and Heidelberg. Therefore, the recommendation suggests new service between the Pines Shopping Centre to Box Hill and between the Pines Shopping Centre to Heidelberg Station via Templestowe Village and Bulleen. I support and asked my fellow councillors to support the bus network review, and I thank our officers for the good work they have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
There isn't really much else to say other than to congratulate the officers for the proactive way in looking at this issue. Interestingly, today a number of councillors here attended the Melbourne Transport Bus Forum, and I think through the deliberations with other councillors and experts in relation to bus services, we discovered that we're ahead in relation to others because we've done that particular review, which is very thorough. It's given us 20 recommendations and has put us ahead of others. The only thing I would suggest is, whilst at the August council meeting we suggested or asked that the BRT be supported by the state government, I think we need to, and we've learned today, that we need to be very, very active in our lobbying and advocacy, because the state government has got so many other issues. There are so many other issues, even in relation to this matter, that our request might not find their way. The BRT, I understand from today that the state government has got a 5-year implementation plan, and the BRT is not included in it. If that's the case, we're looking at 10 years from now, and that's unacceptable. So I'm strongly supporting, or rather urging other councillors and the council itself and the officers to intensify our lobbying activity in relation to the BRT.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 12, community programs. There are none. Shared services. There are none. We're going straight to item 14, Chief Executive Officer. 14.1, Eastern Regional Group of Councils, ERG, Governance and Draft Strategic Plan 2018. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
I'd like to move an alternate motion, actually. But the council advised the Eastern Regional Group of Councils that it does not endorse the proposed governance and financial arrangements as outlined in the report, and requests that the existing governance model be maintained.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galbally. Councillor Conlon.
Yeah, the reason that I'm not supporting the recommendation and proposing alternate is because what I see out of the ERG at the moment, the Eastern Regional Group, is they're being very effective in its informal manner. It's gained collaboration from a number of councils and some success through that informal association. However, this proposal is a step towards creating just, I see, as an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy associated with it, at a cost of $30,000 per annum, and it's very difficult for me to see what benefit that will create for the people of Manningham.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Galbally?
No, nothing to add, thanks.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Councillor McLeish?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I've gone back and forth on this particular one a couple of times as I've contemplated it.
Get off the fence.
Yes, indeed. It's an uncomfortable place to be, but I'm here speaking against the motion because in the end I think we are better served by attempting to collaborate with our neighbouring councils as effectively as we can. I appreciate that that level of collaboration waxes and wanes in its efficacy over time, but this is a new initiative. It's an attempt to try and improve and extend cooperation between councils, to develop a mechanism for stronger joint advocacy on issues of concern. There's a framework laid out for it. It provides a constructive framework for that to happen. It constructs an effective policy basis for us to do that, and I think it is worth us attempting. In the end, it's going to be as effective as the people who represent the council are able to cooperate together to bring together the eastern region, to bring together what will be hundreds of thousands, in fact over 1 million residents. And it would be quite an effective lobbying body if it is able to deliver upon its promise. And I think that is something that is worth attempting and worth supporting. That's not to say the current arrangement is ineffective. It's simply not what I'm saying. The current arrangement has a limited capability. It is certainly an opportunity for those who are part of it to meet one another, build personal relationships, communicate the issues. But I think for more effective strategic presentation of the region, I think this represents an effort that is worth supporting and trialling. And for that reason, I would ask councillors to support the recommendation. And if we did so, I would foreshadow a supplementary motion that would limit our financial commitment and engagement in it for the first year, subject to a review.
Thanks. Any speakers for? Speakers for?
Can I?
Okay. No, because you've said no. So, well, you can
I
now.
can.
She was a seconder.
She was a seconder.
Forfeited her right.
Yes.
The seconder, she forfeits.
Can I draw it back again?
No. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you
So-
go. You're far better than that.
I'll allow you,
So,
councillor.
Mr Honorary Mayor, am I allowed to speak?
Councillor? Yes. Councillor, your time has started.
Oh, my time is started. Okay. Look, I agree, obviously, with Councillor Conlon in the sense that, you know, an extra layer of bureaucracy is not what we need. We are already paid-up members of MAV, VLGA, and actually we're not members of the Eastern ELGA, whatever it's called, Eastern Alliance for Greenhouse Action. We're actually members of the Northern Alliance of Greenhouse Action, so go figure. So, you know, we must have crossed the boundary at some point. But we've got enough external connections and meetings and representations. Whenever we go to a forum or a conference, we can gain and glean whatever information we need. It's at our fingertips. We don't have to pay any more for it. Just so we can say that we're members of something else, and yes, we're going to pay extra money for an extra bit of what. I don't think it's, you know, I think it'd be a good thing for us to sit back and let it play out, because they don't really need us. I think maybe we're just filling in for someone else. But so myself, I think we should leave it, because we don't need to be paying any more, and enough bureaucracy, and our constituents actually paying us basically to work for them, and we have to look after Manningham number one, and we can do that with the alliances we've already got and paid for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any speakers against? Councillor Zafiropoulos.
You mean
I can see that this is a controversial issue because whenever we spend money which is not directly targeting Manningham, it does create some challenges and it does create some issues and problems. However, whilst this is not a program that would allow Manningham to have full control of the situation, it does create a forum for us to be able to discuss with similar councils to ours, neighbours of ours, ways of improving whatever we're doing. Councils can never have enough money, for instance, to undertake major research. But if 6 councils join together, that would allow us to pay 1/6, and that would enable us then to complete the research. Looking at the report, we shouldn't just ignore what this report is saying. This report is saying, yes, it's saying things that are coming from the group itself, but nevertheless, it's in the report. It says that we will have improved visibility because we're not going to be just as Manningham. I've seen it today at the forum where when you join with other councils, your visibility is enhanced. We will have improved advocacy. It's more likely for a minister, a state government or a federal government to listen to a regional council of organisation of 6 than to listen just to Manningham. So, integrated planning. I'm aware of a number of councils that joined together and were successful in obtaining funding from the state government and other sources. So that's another advantage. Simplified connection to state and federal government. I've already mentioned that. Improved performance opportunities. We all know about economies of scale and productivity opportunities, and this would allow us to do that with $30,000, which in a budget of millions, it's a minuscule amount. The other thing is it's the reputational damage that we will make to Manningham, that we're not playing ball with our neighbours. That to me, and we shouldn't assume that the old model will be in existence if this is created by the other councils, and my information tells me that almost all the other councils, one was a question mark, would vote for it. So,
Thank you. Any speakers for? Is that a Councillor Goff? Is that a was that a sigh of yes, or I'm just clarifying, Councillor?
I've got a question.
So do I.
My question is, does this group actually take the place of the monthly meetings of the CEOs in the Eastern region?
No, it's a separate group.
This is a separate...
Through you, Madam Mayor. The establishment of this group will require a reconsideration of how that works. It may well be that the current ERG grouping is subsumed within this grouping, or it may run parallel. That's yet to be decided.
Does the, what about the Mayor and CEO meetings every second month?
The same answer applies, Councillor.
What about a number of the strategic things that we're doing with, I suppose, working with our neighbours in contracting out services and things like that? Is it going to create a change there?
Collaborative.
You're still going to be able to still be doing that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Council has a wide variety of shared service arrangements currently in place. Ones in the future may be affected. It's unlikely because that economies of scale that Councillor Zafiropoulos mentioned earlier is a benefit to all of us. So I'm uncertain in terms of the future of that, but our current arrangements would continue.
Madam Mayor, I will speak in favour of the motion, if that's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Goff.
Madam Mayor, I'm rising to speak in favour of this particular motion. It's very hard. Look, for me, it's got nothing to do with the actual $30,000 or whatever the payment is. Councillor Zafiropoulos was right. That is not the consideration. What is probably more for me at the moment is the establishment of another political level that is above our council level. And they will be having representatives, i.e., from what I understand, the mayor and one other lucky councillor who is going to speak on behalf of Manningham. Now, I know that the mayor can speak on behalf of Manningham, representing the views of Manningham, but these people are going to this other forum as two individuals that can influence what is said in the region, which will then influence us on our policies here in Manningham and therefore is a threat to our independence on where we stand on things. And it's at that particular point that I have concerns about this particular group. In talking about what you can do, it doesn't mean that, you know, if people want to say, well, if you're not going to come into our club, then we're not going to work with you or whatever, that's something that we can't help that's going to happen or may happen in the future. I don't believe that $30,000 times 6 is very much money. What it does do, though, is it pays for another person to be there and to get busy and prepare the agendas and prepare that. So we're going to be prepared to pay a couple $100,000 a year for another person to organise the councils to get together on a periodical basis to do that. And that's where all of that money will go. There won't be any money in the money of that $30,000 to do research or whatever. You can't even get a planning report for under about $30,000 for a dual occupancy or something. So I don't see how we're going to be getting investigative reports for that sort of money. What we're actually setting up is a person to work in another council to run this particular organisation. But it's at that level of creating a new mayor of the Eastern region, because I believe the idea is that we would appoint or elect a person to represent the whole Eastern region. So we are then, you know, where at the moment the mayor is the person, is the mouthpiece of Manningham. We, as Manningham, become part of this whole Eastern region, and there's this other person who we don't know who is that mouthpiece. So I have concerns at the moment, and I think at the moment, unless it's clear exactly what's going to go on, unless it's much clearer what's going on, I'm happy to not take part at the moment and monitor it.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any speakers against?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Question, Councillor McLeish.
Could someone please enlighten me as to whether, if a mayor or a councillor is representing council in a public forum, whether they're actually in a position to invent policy of their own, or are they required to adhere to the decisions and policy made by Manningham Council?
Well,
Through you, Madam Mayor. No individual councillor has the ability to determine policy. That is the role of the full council.
Yeah, and my question was, can they therefore represent any other different position when they represent Manningham Council in such a forum? They can only represent, surely they can only represent the policy and decisions of Manningham Council.
in theory.
Yes.
Thank you.
A question?
A point of, well, can I address it up as a question? It's a point of clarification, if I can make that. Look, I fully understand Councillor Goff's comment about $108,000 just going to provide the salary and nothing else. Well, I'm aware of another similar body that I was involved in many, many years ago that used a similar model, paid a person, but that person that was able to make submissions to the government, and I recall quite distinctly that that body, which was
Sorry,
INRA,
Councillor, what's the clarification?
the clarification is that the money will be inadequate to do any research, and what I'm saying is that the money will be adequate for funding applications which will attract money to undertake the research. That's the clarification.
That's what you wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I've got a question.
Question, Councillor Galbley.
Those funding applications, I mean, would it sometimes be, Madam Mayor, that it's not in Manningham's interest? Like, how can we actually indicate that it's going to be in our interest, whatever the funding application is for? For instance, is anyone going to advocate for a train to Manningham?
I'll get the CEO to clarify, perhaps.
Councillors, if you refer to page 307 of the report under the ERG governance,
Thank you.
I think some of the questions you're asking are covered in that. Some of the mechanisms by which decisions will be made on the activities, allocation of the scarce resources that would be available would be made by the group, and then decisions would need to be made by the group in terms of what activities are undertaken. And I would hazard a guess that it's unlikely that proper consideration of everyone's interests wouldn't be taken into account of that decision making. However, that can't be guaranteed. But the reality is in those types of groups, a collegiate approach is normally one of the foundation stones.
Thank you. Any speakers against?
Madam Mayor, I'm not certain which side of the fence I'm on right now, as far as for and against.
Let's hope it's not
This
barbed wire.
At the moment, I've been jumping across. But reading the ERG strategic plan and the 40 pages of this document, I'm not aware of if it's possible if we could opt in, if we opt out at this point at any time. Is that possible, or is it only we have to either decide now and then 2020 decide in?
Councillor, I think it would. I think there'll always be the possibility that you could opt in. I can't.
As long as you've got the money.
Okay,
As long as
so
you've got-
I would like to support
Okay.
Councillor Conlon's one, and I don't know which side you want me
Okay,
to
that's the
talk
four.
about.
That's the four. Okay. All right, we're all relaxed here. Okay, so any more speakers against? They haven't already spoken. All right, Councillor Conlon, would you like to sum up?
Sure. I guess I've tried to listen. I've listened to Councillor McLeish and Councillor Zafiropoulos. I think it's a big if, actually, that Councillor McLeish said, you know, if the formalisation of this ERG will produce better collaboration. That's a big if to me. Because in my experience, when you start trying to formalise stuff, collaboration works best informally. When you formalise it, you start getting games played, you start getting bureaucracy, rules, and that kills collaboration. So that's one point. Just in regard to Councillor Zafiropoulos' points regarding research, integrated planning, productivity, that can all happen in an informal, that's my understanding is it happens now, in an informal collaboration agreement. And by potentially, in fact, I'll even take another step. We're better off informally collaborating with much wider councils than just the ERG if we're serious about collaboration. Because if we're serious about economies of scale, that's what we should be pursuing. I don't know if that's going to happen if we're part of the ERG. In terms of policy, how would we see ourselves getting advocacy from this group for a BRT when every single other council in that group has public rail? So that's my summation.
Thank you. We'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 14.2, Annual Reports 2016-17. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor Haynes. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a very detailed and lengthy report, and it's really important in terms of us establishing our reputation for transparent and open governance. There are many highlights in the report. I'll just point out a few, but I would just like to say that it has been approved by the auditor has signed off on this report. It indicates we've spent $1.6 million on community grants. We've had 1,164 births supported by our maternal and child health centres, and that's not one of mine, and I've had a few. And there's also been $47.9 million in capital works delivered, and 134,000 square metres, trying to work that out in hectares, probably about 13 hectares of council roads have been resurfaced. So that's a fantastic job. So I'd like to thank the officers and the CEO for an excellent job in delivering on our plan and on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haynes?
I have nothing further to add, except I think Councillor Conlon's added more than a few to our population.
Any speakers against? Let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? It's carried. Item 14.3, Proposed Meeting Procedural Local Law 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor Piccinini.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
To have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Piccinini.
Madam Mayor, Council has conducted a review of its meeting procedure laws, and as well as seeking feedback from councillors on the present law, which was quite extensive. We met 3 times and we had very good and detailed discussions. The officers have also undertaken an extensive benchmarking review within our sector, with particular focus on transparency in decision-making for local government, in line with the Ombudsman's report. We have before Council the proposed new meeting procedure laws, and in accordance with statutory processes, these proposed laws will be gazetted and open to public submission for a period of 1 month from the 6th of November to the 4th of December. And then these submissions will be considered at the same time as our public council meeting in December. The amendments are quite extensive, but there are 2 aspects to the amendments that I'd like to highlight. Firstly, and most importantly, I feel, is the public question time. The amendments propose to consolidate the verbal and public question time clauses and bring them forward to prior to the meeting, so that the public can ask questions about items on the agenda before they're debated and determined by council. And I think this is a very positive step, because it's clearly what our residents have been wanting. Secondly, the other aspect I'd like to highlight is motions and amendments to motions. Councillors will be able to speak for or against any motion, and no councillor will be prevented from speaking, which is currently sometimes the case if there's no prior for or against speaker. So this also will provide greater transparency in decision making, because every councillor will have an opportunity to express why they are for or against a motion. And I commend the officers' good work and detailed work in providing these amendments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Goff.
No.
Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? It's carried. 14.4, Record of Assembly of Councillors, October 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeish. Councillor Chen. Councillor McLeish. Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Passed. Carried. 14.5, Documents for Sealing, 31st of October 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor Haynes.
I move that the alternative recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Haynes.
Madam Mayor, thankfully, Council has distributed the alternative recommendation and I don't need to read out the documents for sealing. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Goff.
No, nothing.
Okay, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 15, urgent business. 15.1, appointment of authorised officer, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor McLeish.
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing to add.
Lovely. Put that to a vote. Those in favour? It's carried. Item 16, written questions from the public.
Are there no questions, Madam Mayor?
Lovely. Item 17, councillor question timing. Councillor Zafiropoulos, anything?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request an officer's report outlining the number of parking waivers we have approved during 2017. The report should be categorised in terms of residential, commercial and visitor car parking and in terms of approving delegate, that is council or officer. The report should also highlight the number of credits granted due to public car parking considerations. The report should be presented to council.
Thank you, councillor Zafiropoulos. Would you take into account that study would be from a greater period, let's say from 2010?
Yeah,
Instead of just this year?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Goff?
I'm just going back to our office here now. I thought we did have a thing here at Manningham that we can ask for the report. It then gets discussed at SBS and the final dimensions of that get sorted out at the SBS meeting. Because it's very hard for anyone here to actually say yes to report if we don't know the scope or the costing or everything else. But I agree with the report that needs to get there. But I believe that we do have that situation.
Yes.
So basically, that will
get
go
referred to an
SBS to be
SBS.
discussed.
Correct. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, councillor Zafiropoulos. That'll help the wording. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have an issue that I'd like to... A question that I'd like to raise here to you with regard to, again, a report, but to go to an SBS meeting and to find ways forward. And the report is about, I suppose, we all understand that in Manningham at the moment, the NBN is being rolled out in Bulleen and Lower Templestowe and around Doncaster. And what they are using is the Telstra and Foxtel network infrastructure. And in most occasions, now there are some, but in most occasions the structure that's been put up by Optus, all the Optus cable, has become redundant. And my question is, what can we do about the redundant infrastructure that is in our suburbs, and how can we get it removed by the authorities that perhaps put it up there, or someone that put it up there? Indeed, Madam Mayor, I think you may not be aware, but when those Optus cables were rolled out within Manningham, there was great community backlash against these very low cables going along in the streets and into houses and things. Seeing that those cables could remain there for another 100 years and not be used, I'm just wondering if we can work out a further way with a report to further getting those cables and that taken out, because the ones that are redundant and need not be there.
Thank you. Yep, the officer's got that. That will be referred to a SBS in due course. Councillor Haynes, anything?
No, nothing. I had a question regarding Councillor Zafiropoulos' thing, but it's okay.
You'll take that
Just
offline?
speak to the CEO later about it.
Thank you.
It's just a
Yes?
word or two that was missing, so it's
Yep.
all good, and it's coming to the briefing session, which was part of my question, so thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? Okay. Confidential reports? No. This meeting is closed. Thank you.